all religions worship the same God? I have met so many people in my life who have told me that they believe that there is a higher power, that there is this one God, and that they believe that all the religions are worshiping this same God. They're just doing it in different ways. Often people who say that there is a higher power, that there is some type of God, but they don't want to commit to any religion, we call them agnostic. And so this is an important question to look at. It's become more and more popular, and really the reason why it is because people don't want to choose sides. They don't want to say one religion is better than the other, but they also cannot deny the fact that there must be some supreme being that rules the universe. So let me just briefly look at this question. Do all religions worship the same God? And let me just look at the four biggest religions in the world and compare them to each other just quickly. Christianity claims to have about 31.2% of the world population, Islam 24.1%, Hinduism 15.1%, and then Buddhism at 6.9%. These are the four major religions in the world. And let's just look at them quickly. I would like to submit to you that if it is true that all these religions are actually worshipping the same God, then whoever that God is extremely confused and is very contradictory. Because to one group of people he says something, and to another group of people he says something else, and often these things are contradictory. Now let's evaluate that quickly. All four of these religions claim to have different gods. Christianity has a triune God. It's one God with three persons. Islam says there's one God. Hinduism says there are 200 million gods with some overarching spirit that is sort of the main God. And then in Buddhism doesn't claim that there is any God. So there's no God. You see already the fundamental differences between these religions. Let's talk about the different names of these gods. Christianity has a God whose name is Yahweh. Islam's God's name is Allah. In Hinduism, obviously, there's 200 million gods or something like that. But the main spirit deal that I just mentioned, they call him Brahman. And then obviously Buddhism doesn't have a God. You say they're different in the amount that they are different in their names. And then thirdly, these gods require different things from their followers, from the people who follow them. In Christianity, basically all you need to please God is faith and love. In Islam, I suppose you've got to obey the 5 pillars of Islam, for example, which is really it's the Shahada. You got to be able to say that. You got to commit to the prayer 5 times a day. You got to give alms. You got to do fasting. You got to do the Hajj once in your lifetime. And I'm certain that there's other deeds as well. Certain food you're not allowed to eat, clothing, etc. that you got to wear, etc., etc. And then you get to Hinduism, and in Hinduism it's also quite complex. You got to be a good person, and you've got to say the mantras. In Buddhism, there's a lot of meditation, and you also got to be a good person, like a peace-loving type of deal. And that's interesting because in all the faiths say you got to be like a good person, but there's these other things that is often emphasized by the gods to be important. That seems to create differences between the religions. So there are different requirements by these religions, key requirements, and then there are different ideas about life after death. In Christianity, there is talk about heaven, and heaven, the idea of heaven that is portrayed in Christianity is that people will get into the presence of God, which means eternal peace. And it's about intimacy with the God of the universe, having a relationship with Him and being in glorious joy forever. The idea of heaven in Islam seems to be very much focused around pleasure, as there has been said by many people that men who offer themselves up in sacrifice to Allah can receive 72 virgins in heaven. Then we get to Hinduism, and Hinduism is very much reincarnation orientated. The goal is to be freed from reincarnation, and that's a whole nother discussion for another day. Buddhism also believes in reincarnation, and there is the idea of nirvana, being freed from your fleshly lust. So not only do these gods have different names and different requirements and different ideas of what happens after death, what the key features are, they also have different scriptures that say various different things and were acquired in different ways. The Christianity has got writings that was written over a period of 1,600 years by 40 different people, and that's it. That's the canon of scripture that tells one story, and it's a love letter from God to man. In Islam, you have the Quran, you've got the Hadith, you've got the Sunnah scriptures, which is quite complex to put all that together. And in Hinduism, you've got the Vedas, and we don't even know where these really come from. In Buddhism, you do have the Sutra, which was written by Ananda, which was Buddha's first disciple and the man that sort of took over after Buddha died. And so they've got different scriptures that portray different ideas. And then lastly, they've got different founders. Christianity was started by Jesus. God becomes man, dies on a cross, buried in a tomb, raised to life on the third day. His body is not on the planet. Then you go to Islam. You've got Muhammad. He's raised in a town where he opposes pagan gods, meets an angel in the cave who tells him to write down some things that was after his death compiled into the Quran. And then you have, and he's buried in, I think he's buried in Megiddo. And then you've got Hinduism. We don't know who wrote the scriptures, the Vedas. And then you've got Buddha, the founder of the Buddhist faith. And these guys were not the same. These guys didn't stand for the same thing. So what we can say is that maybe all these religions can be wrong, but they can't all be right. And that leaves us in a position where we need to go and evaluate which is the truth. And the question that everybody then asks is, how do I know which one is true? I'd like to submit that, we could have debates, we can talk about facts and rationality and history, and I think all of those plays a role. The facts are important, the history is important, the simplicity of the religion, the relevance of this faith to my life is very, very important. But I think at the core of it is this: people who love truth, people who are honest, people who live love and are truthfully seeking the creator of the universe will find him if they open their hearts. Now, I personally choose Christianity. That's my journey. And if you want to know more as to why, I challenge you to go check out this week's podcast on Fishing for Men with Mac. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful week.